I'm Karen Stewart, and as a sexual assault survivor, I'm angry at the Prime Minister's words recently at the Women's Safety Summit. A man who inserts himself into the women's domain needs to make sure he's earned the trust and the right to be there. The last thing women need are more violations and impotent words. In my opinion, that's all we got. I was abused at the hands of two men in a church youth group in 1990. These two men repeatedly sexually assaulted me throughout the week, sometimes together, sometimes separately. Despite the youth leader reporting the matter to the church minister, nothing was ever reported. Reverend Wykes, the church minister, deemed it was kids mucking around and took no further action. Maroubra Baptist is a small congregation in Sydney's eastern suburbs. That in the 1990s, this community included Scott Morrison as a member, occasional preacher, and part of the church's leadership. The Morrisons have remained friends with Reverend Wykes to the current day, having attended the church's centenary celebrations and Reverend Wykes' recent retirement service. The Wykes family also enjoy holidaying in Hawaii. Although I expect the Morrisons are familiar with the two men who assaulted me, I'm not representing that they knew of the crimes at the time. Scott's inclusion to the church eldership put him in a position where he ought to have known that something had happened. Unfortunately, churches do not have adequate regulatory oversight on matters such as these. There's not adequate minutes taken. There's not declarations, conflicts of interest. An incoming deacon or elder is not provided with any sort of background information that might allow them to act on crimes that have been alleged. Reverend Wykes has admitted he told nobody because he believed to do so would be engaging in gossip. Recently, the Prime Minister said there's still an attitude, a culture that excuses, justifies, ignores or condones gender equality that ultimately drives violence against women. So earlier this year, the Prime Minister had questions posed to him about whether he knew of my sexual assault that had taken place at Maroubra Baptist Church. As Prime Minister, he did not answer. As an Australian, he didn't answer. Did he take any action after alerting of these allegations, even though they involved the sister of his very close friends? As an Australian man, did he take action to discuss the allegations with Reverend Wykes or with the current church minister, Reverend Wykes' son? A lack of action is the attitude, it's the very culture that excuses and justifies and ignores the violence against women. How can the attitude or the culture of men change if the person occupying the highest office in the land does nothing and condones via his inaction the lack of reporting on sexual assaults? Where does responsibility start for you, Prime Minister? Please elaborate on your perception of responsibility, because it makes no sense to me. You spoke at the summit of reading many letters and emails from women about their sexual assaults and the violence they've endured. Yet you didn't bother reading the letter sent to you involving very serious allegations against your cabinet minister. You didn't stand him down pending an investigation. You didn't establish an inquiry. You used the word innocent to describe an alleged perpetrator relying solely on his word. How do you think that makes victims of sexual abuse feel? You allowed the Cabinet Minister to also coincide with the Women's March for Justice his announcement that he would be suing the female reporter that unearthed those serious allegations. The timing of that is utterly reprehensible and deeply disrespectful to the women that marched that day for justice. You allowed that to happen. You said the foundation of respect for women in Australian society is not what it should be, and that all of us, but Australian men in particular, have an obligation to build those foundations every day. On this, I couldn't agree more, but I accuse you, Mr. Prime Minister, of not building these foundations every day. I feel ignored. I feel betrayed. I feel lonely. I feel disrespected. I feel devalued. I feel undignified. I feel damaged. I feel scared. I feel judged. And I feel broken. These are not the emotions of a woman who feels respected. These are the emotions of someone who feels their sexual assault has been swept under the carpet. And the Prime Minister even knows about mine, so I should be in a special place where perhaps I was going to get priority treatment, but it seemingly works for some in my family and not others. You said this is everybody's business. Men have a large part to play. So if it's everybody's business, why have you not made sexual assault your business? Your friendships with Brian Houston and Reverend Neil Wykes, both who have failed to disclose child sexual assault to the police. How are you holding those institutions to account? The institutions that you are intimately involved with, that are managed and overseen by your brethren, your colleagues. It's an ongoing failure for the women of Australia that you've chosen to not make sexual assaults your business, but encourage others to do it. Disrespect for women is watching Australian Prime Ministers ignore the sexual assaults happening in your immediate vicinity while expounding hollow words at a women's safety summit. And to honour Grace Tame and the lack of dignity you've afforded her in her speech, yes, I do feel better for getting this out.